Hi, and thank you for inviting me to the Queen City Sitecore user group. My name is Michael West, and I'm fortunately a Core Community Award winner from 2018. I'm also a Sitecore Technology MVP from 2015 to 2018, and a contributor to the Sitecore PowerShell Extensions module. I imagine a few of you have met me in person, and I look forward to meeting those that have not in the Sitecore Symposium. Today is not about what is Sitecore PowerShell Extensions, but I would like to give you an introduction for those that have never heard of it. It's basically an integration between the Sitecore content management system and the Windows PowerShell API. There are several providers that come with Windows PowerShell, most notably the file system provider, which allows you to interact with files and folders. There's even a registry provider that some people find useful. So essentially, Sitecore PowerShell Extensions comes with a CMS item provider, which allows the module to interact through the Sitecore API in a PowerShell syntax. It's built using Microsoft.NET, some JavaScript, some CSS, some HTML. It's all bleeding edge. It's using sheer UI. In the module, there are PowerShell run spaces that are loaded up in the context of an ASP.NET application. And so each run space then in essence has access to everything that Sitecore is doing. The run spaces execute through jobs managed through Sitecore, so it takes advantage of existing functionality. The Sitecore API calls are wrapped in PowerShell commands. So the Windows PowerShell API provides a syntax in order to build your commands, and you can actually do that through compiled code or through functions. Functions are it's a script that wraps that functionality. There's also some web services that you could communicate with. That's useful when you want to remotely manage the Sitecore installation. Think of it like I can sit at the browser and I can run some commands, or I can do it from my continuous integration server. The module for that piece, the web service communication, that is a Windows PowerShell module that you install manually. So, the fun stuff. What's new in Sitecore PowerShell Extensions 5.0? We've included a PowerShell Reports dashboard. While there are only 2 reports that are included with this release, there is an opportunity for developers to produce all sorts of reports they'd like. You could imagine writing a report that connects to the XConnect web service and returns some relevant data. This is a way for you to put that on a dashboard without having to do a ton of custom work. There's some major improvements to the rules-based reports. I felt like the previous version lacked quite a bit, and in order to make these improvements, the find item command was revamped to include some additional functionality. There are many new and improved reports. There's an audit trail report that looks at the log files. There's some content security reports that admins may find useful. And even the media reports, primarily one that will find items of a specific size, but the size and file type has been added to many of the other reports. Exporting to an Excel file is way faster. Previously, it was magnitudes slower than the export to CSV. So through some optimizations, the timing is much more reasonable for someone that's exporting, let's say, 10,000 items. And the reports now support creating custom objects. Previously, the item had to be an item type. Now you can just create very lightweight objects to do that. And my favorite topic, picking icons. All of the icons in the module have been updated to use the Office icons, both the standard ones and the white colored ones. And the script runner has an improved theme. We've got rid of the Vista experience. I believe every integration point that comes out of the box now, maybe 99% of the integration points, use the rules engine now. So before, if you wanted to have a content editor warning, it would spin up a run space, and in your script you had to determine if you wanted to show the warning or not. Now you can use the rules engine to determine whether an integration should be enabled, rather the script for that integration point should be enabled and or shown. And we'll cover more in detail in the demo. There's a new ribbon and context menu tool called an elevated unlock. This would allow someone in a specific Sitecore role, I believe it's the Sitecore local admin's role. If they are in that role or a superset of that role, so some role that inherits from it, they would get access to this unlock button. This is useful if you want to create tenant-specific admins. And an example would be you've got a tenant called Concentra.com, and Concentra has an admin, an editor, a developer, and I want the admin to be able to go in and unlock items. The button would enable if they don't have if they had access to that role, they would be able to unlock it. And this is useful if someone left the company or they're no longer working in Sitecore. There are also a few new tools in the Toolbox, and you'll find these under the data management item. The ISE now includes snippets. This terminology, I understand, shows up in several different places and different modules. In this case, you can think of it like a little code snippet that you want to copy and paste into the scripting environment. There's a button within the ISE that will inject that right into the editor. There are also some improvements to the way that the way that you would mouse over variables and it would preview what data is there. Now it works in more scenarios. And the console has had a facelift. So now we'll do a quick demo. All right, so we will cover the first item, which was the PowerShell Dashboard. From the Launchpad, you'll see this new icon called PowerShell Reports. And if everything is set up correctly, you'll see these two reports appear. Now in this particular installation, I don't have much activity from either the admin or any other role, but this particular report looks at the history table and will show a chart as there's more and more activity. So if I were to take a guess, I could go to an item and save it. Okay, now we're on the home item. I hit save, and if all is well in the report, it didn't show up like I thought it would. This report also shows up the license usage. So you can imagine that there are 10 user licenses for your installation, and I as an admin am logged in and consuming one license. So find item was something that I improved to enhance the PowerShell reports. So let me just show you what the rules-based report improvement is. I had mentioned there's some UI improvements, so you'll see the runner no longer shows the Vista experience. So with this report, you're presented with some rules-based reports, things that have been pre-configured in the tree. At the moment, a developer would go in and use a very simple UI to build a query. Then you would pick the report that you'd like to run. You can alter which fields appear in the report. So here it showed that I had no media, so let's double check, see if I have any media that are JPEGs. So we see that this is a PNG, both of these are PNGs. So let's go ahead and add an image. Let's see, here we go. Okay, so we've got a unicorn. Let's see if that report does what I certainly hope it does. Okay, so now we would troubleshoot. Of course, this is how things go when you do a demo. So if we look under the authorizable reports, you can see that there is a rule report, and we've got one media item is a JPEG. So if we do build query, let me go check and see if my search index is running. Alright, so I found the strangest thing, that this original report, which appeared to work in Sitecore 8.2, the template name is now with a capital J and not a lowercase, so we get the items now. Yay! So I'll go run the report again. And cross your fingers and your eyes. Okay, so the custom fields are fields that are on the templates for whatever items are coming back. And you can see that the dimensions, the size are returned. Then there's some standard fields that show up. I believe a couple of the first ones are going to be PowerShell generated. There's also some other ones that are just often used, so those are put up to the top. But then you can scroll through and see some of the other standard fields. If you decided to make a change to which fields are there, you can hit the Save Field Selections to the rule, and it will overwrite the existing rule. So then we go ahead and hit OK, and we get the output. So here we have 34 results. It looks like it's split between 2 pages. Yeah. Okay. And just from the visual presentation, you'll see that this background is now a blue color. It's more of an informational color rather than a warning. So all the old reports showed like a yellow color, and now we get this more subtle blue color. And as I mentioned before, all of the media reports were updated to include the file size of the media item. So if you exported this into Excel, you would be able to do some filtering based on files that are too big for your installation, or maybe ones that you want to be more optimized for, like banners. You want to optimize the banners to be a smaller size for mobile devices. So all sorts of things that you can do with these reports now. All right. So moving on, the rules reports, the way this will work is if you create a new module. So this name is starting to feel overused, but if you create a Sitecore PowerShell Extensions module using the wizard, which I've named this wizard now, you would create a rules directory, and the rules directory would then allow you to create one of these template types, PowerShell rule or PowerShell rule library. The rule then contains the scope query. So this is a query builder field type. If you use SXA, you'd be familiar with this when you build a scope query. You can also alternatively choose a node in the tree. This would perform a different kind of search. So the search scope would perform a content search scope, content search query using the content search API. So if you have Solar or Lucene or some other search engine, it's going to query against that. Far more performant to get those items back. The root node will simply do a recursive search from the node you provided. So potentially, in theory, you could scope it to a part of the tree that would make it even more efficient than the search API, but probably unlikely. You might consider creating reports that are specific to a tenant, and so whether you use the root node or the search scope, you can constrain it to a particular item in the tree. Following that, when those results come back, the filter rules are applied. So these are rules that are applied after we get those initial items. So in this particular case, the search scope looked for all items in, I believe, the media library that have a template name of JPEG. And then it filtered it out to make sure that the item template is also JPEG. So one could argue, well, I could have just removed this altogether and used this rule. But you can see that there's two different ways that you could have accomplished that problem. So they're both there for your pleasure. If you build your own module and you include this rules folder and build your own reports underneath, those will be grouped together and you'll see basically everything in alphabetical order. If you decide that you want to not show these, well, that's not a feature yet, so you'll have to perhaps wait till the next version. One important note is that the rules-based report once upon a time appeared within the Toolbox. I've moved it to the reports menu because it just made more sense to go there. All right. And so let's talk a little bit more about the find item. So in a lot of these reports, they originally would do a get child item query recursively, and that was fine, but it was expensive. Many of them have now been updated to use the get descendants, access get descendants, which it's fine for a report it's not fine if you were going to make that kind of call on the front end in your components. So I encourage you not to do that. But I do encourage you to perhaps revise any custom reports you've built so that they run faster for the marketer. So if we open up the ISE, and create new, what I want to do is run the find item command, but you know, I'm new to the module, I'm a little bit new to Sitecore, and I just don't know what to type in there. And just short of going to Slack, I can hit the snippet button, and you're presented with a dialog that lets you choose which snippet to paste into here. So if I did the find item with predicate, then you can see that the script appears. I didn't have to type anything in here. And just for your benefit, I will increase the size on the screen. And here you can see that this is really a new way to build queries in the module. So before you would create some simple hash tables, but they were all AND operations. And now you have the option of creating and logical OR operations. So in this particular case, we're going to look for items that contain a template name of these, I think, 3 or 4 template names. So we have template field, sample item, and something else. And that's going to be ORed together, logical OR. And I also want items that contain Sitecore in the title. These two predicates are going to be ANDed together. So in other words, give me all the templates, or excuse me, give me all the items that have a template of template field or sample item or other. And when you know what that is, I also want the item to contain a title of Sitecore, and those together. Then we want to make sure that it's a descendant of a specific part of the tree. So here we have the something to set up looking at a particular root node, and those are ANDed together. So this template or this template or template and has this title, and it's a descendant of this part of the tree. When I execute the query, you can see that there were 3 items that were returned. This is the same item, but with the 3 different versions. So the content search is going to give you back whatever's in the index. So you could filter this out by a particular language if you wanted to. I can clear this out and choose a new snippet. So criteria is an existing one. And scope query is what enabled the rules-based report to work. So it allowed you to take, provide the index and a scope query built by the query builder field. And if I run that, here we get all the items that contain Sitecore in the title. Yay! So if we continue on with this theme of the snippets, one of the fun ones to create is a content editor warning. But the setup for that is really tedious. So now we get that right here in the snippet. And you can see that there's a lot going on in here. But basically what's going to happen is I'm going to create a warning with an icon, a title. The little message that appears below the title is going to have the icon appear in it. And as I mentioned before, you can specify rules on the content editor warning. So if we look at a new tool that I mentioned previously, the elevated unlock, you can see that the warning contains an enable rule which evaluates for admins and local admins. And then it's going to run whatever this script is. And we can experiment with that. If I go unlock the item, you'll see that here this elevated unlock is disabled. And a quick kind of hack to make that work is if I go to, I think it's workflow. I'll just make up a name. Sorry for the hammering on the keyboard. Okay, here we go. We've got this content editor warning with the icon and a button to unlock. One of the rules in there is to only enable it if you did not lock it yourself. So admin locks it, we don't need to enable it for the admin. Admin is already elevated. If you have a content editor and then you have an approver and the approver wants to go in and unlock it, well then you could put them in the admin privileges. You can work up whatever use case works best for your organization. All right. So let's just dive into a little bit more of the reports because that's what's fun and exciting. If we go to the PowerShell reports, I did mention before that more integration points use the rules engine. So now if you create a little menu here or context menu, you can restrict which ones appear based on a role or a day of the week or whatever part of the tree you're in. So that would be useful just to prevent people from seeing those items. I think the rules engine's a good way to restrict access rather than trying to go and configure the security on that item. You do a rule and then you can just gradually add the rule as you see fit. It's kind of the only way to do that in the PowerShell module since it's all dynamically generated. So we added this audit trail report. There was a member of the community that had written it and I thought it would be a great addition. So your administrators will hopefully be excited about this kind of report. Out of the box, it just shows everything that is listed under audit. So if you, in your application, have some customizations where you write to the log with the audit, I think it's the audit.log or whatever it's called, you would then see those in this report. Do note that if you modify the logging level within your logger, if audit is not included, then none of the audit stuff will show up. So just be aware of that. So that was the audit trail report. And I did mention before that there's a new media items by size report. This is a great way to just figure out which media items are too big for your database. Maybe the optimizations haven't taken place. Maybe it's a new website and you've been given 50 megabyte files. This is a quick way to go correct that. So here we see that there are 3 images that are larger than 250K. I did build a separate module that is out on GitHub where you can optimize these images. In essence, it will give you a report action and a context menu. You would click on it, and it would go out to a web service, shrink the image, stuff it back into the media library. Then all you have to do is publish it. There's been some other members of the community that have built something similar. I've just taken a little bit further with the report and the context menu. It's probably obvious by now, if you're viewing this pre-recorded session, but these icons are all different now. They don't have the original Sitecore, I guess pre-Sitecore 7 icons or pre-Sitecore 8 icons. These are all going to be refreshed, so that was probably what took 6 months, was to fix these icons. The rest was all easy. Yep. I'm not sure if there's any other reports that are super exciting. I did make improvements to some of these, like how many items inherit from a specific template, or how many times the rendering is used. If you're trying to clean up your solution, some of these are obviously going to help improve your life. You don't have to go count it, or you don't have to go to the navigate button and click links. Looking at the toolbox, you'll see that there's a data management node, and some of the new and improved items, the bulk item restorer, that would provide a way to restore an item that's been deleted that you want restored in bulk. So maybe you've deleted 100 items during your deployment and you go, oh, I need to restore those. This would be a convenient way to do it. The standard recycle bin requires you to restore everything or one at a time. This has a lot of opportunity for improvement, but it's a good start. There's also a find and replace. The find and replace uses the search engine. So let's say, for example, I want to go to the home item and I want to do an it contains, and I want to look in the title field for Sitecore, and I want to replace it. Well, in this case, let's just look for Sitecore. Oh, title. So here we found all the items that have Sitecore in the title in a title field. They're all called Sitecore command, so the title's going to have that. I don't recall how long this has been out, but there's this data importer. It will allow you to import in bulk. Let's say, for example, you are working on a new project and you provided a spreadsheet that contains new titles or new text for a particular item or set of 1,000 items. You can use this wizard to update those in bulk using the item ID or some other field. If you had to keep sending to the client a spreadsheet back and forth, this is a really nice way to make that just less tedious for you. It's an alternative way to writing some PowerShell script that remotely connects to Sitecore and does all this. It's just using a file. Like I said, it's the item ID, the item name, or the field name. All right. And then we have the console. The console did get a facelift. You'll see that when I run a command, that now there's some syntax coloring. I believe both this console and the ISE should show white text and a red background. I find that to be much easier to read. And when you press the up arrow in the console, you'll see that the highlighting is now returned. The IDs are also highlighted now. And let's see, get user. So here we can see that I was able to get the user and nothing crazy. So that pretty much wraps up the bulk of what I wanted to share today. I'd love to get some of your feedback. If you've got any problems, reach out to me on Slack or post an issue on GitHub. You can also tweet me, whatever you feel most comfortable with. And there is a documentation site for those that may not be familiar with it yet, doc.sitecorepowershell.com. And that's it. Look forward to seeing you at Symposium. See you soon.